In this video, I'll be describing the machining of these new coarse adjustment knobs for the Accu-Slice system. These thumb screws are larger than the original thumb screws used on the Accu-Slice Index table. They're machined from brass and are much easier to use to tighten the top plate on the Accu-Slice Index table to the guide bars. Hello, I'm John here from Accu-Slice. I've just redesigned and machined some larger thumb screws to replace these smaller thumb screws used on the Accu-Slice Index table. These are the standard coarse adjustment knobs we've been using for the past 7 years on our Accu-Slice Index table. These thumb screws use a number 1032 thread to lock the Accu-Slice table to the guide bar. The head is a ½ inch diameter, and the height of the head is less than 1/4 inch, which makes these a little bit inconvenient to turn. In addition, they're manufactured from steel. These thumb screws work fine, but I was looking for something a little bit larger, which would be easier to turn to lock that plate to the guide bars. Also, a brass thumb screw would have an improved appearance on the Accu-Slice Index table. However, I was not able to find a thumb screw with a larger head and made from brass unless I went up to a 1/4 inch, 20 thread per inch thread size thumb screw. So I decided to make my own thumb screws for the Accu-Slice Index table. These are the thumb screws that I was able to machine on my Tormach 8L lathe. They include the same number 1032 screw size, but the head is now 5/8 inch in diameter, and the height of the head is now 0.45 inches tall. They're being machined from brass. As a result, they not only look better, but they're easier to turn and lock the top plate of the Accu-Slice Index table to the 2 guide bars. By the end of this year, these will be the standard thumb screws for the Accu-Slice Index table. This picture shows a size comparison between the old and the new thumb screws for the Accu-Slice Index table. These new thumb screws are now available from a website should you wish to replace the thumb screws on your Accu-Slice Index table. The part number is AS276. The thumb screws were machined from a 5-inch diameter brass rod. I machined these on a Tormach 8L lathe using the gang tooling that I designed and described in a previous video. I designed these thumb screws using the PathPilot conversational programming feature for the Tormach 8L lathe. I could have designed them using the Fusion 360 software program, but it was faster and easier to just use the conversational programming feature for the Tormach lathe. As shown here, there were 6 separate tooling operations needed to machine these thumb screws. The first operation was the facing off of the front end of the brass bar to provide for a smooth surface on the end of the brass bar. The second step was machining the external profile of the thumb screw. This shape included the shaft, which will later be threaded, and also the top or handle of the thumb screw. This third step is machining a small chamfer on the end of the brass pin. This chamfer makes it easier to start the threading operation. The fourth step is the machining of the number 1032 threads. I'm using single point threading to form the threads for the thumb screw. The fifth step is knurling of the knob on the top of the thumb screw using a knurling tool. And the final step is the cut off of the thumb screw from the brass bar. This part of the video is being shown at 5 times the actual cutting speed. This setup used the gang tooling for the front and rear tool post, but 3 manual tool changes were required on the front tool post. The first for the profiling tool, the second for the threading tool, and the third for the knurling tool. I edited out the tool changes in this video for faster viewing of the machining operations. I'm machining the thumb screws from a 5/8 inch diameter brass bar, which was 30 inches long. This is step 1, facing off the front edge of the brass bar to provide for a smooth surface on the end of the brass bar. This is step 2, which uses the same tool as I used for the facing operation. In the second step, we machine the external profile of the thumb screw. The shape includes the shaft from which will later be threaded for the threading operation, and also the knob or handle on the opposite side, which is the larger diameter. This is the final pass of the tool on the part. It runs at a slower speed to give a smoother surface on the brass bar. And then this is the third step, using the same tool to create a chamfer on the end of the brass bar. For this fourth step, I changed the tool to a single point threading tool which I used to create the thread for the 1032 screw. In step 4, I changed to the knurling tool, which creates a knurling pattern on the end of the brass piece, and this takes multiple steps to get the depth of the cut required for the knurling operation. And then here in the final step, we use the parting tool to cut off the piece from the brass bar. And here's the final piece just off the machine. I normally run the lathe with cutting fluid to reduce tool wear and to give better finishes, but it's hard to see the actual operations with the cutting fluid spraying all over the brass bar. So I moved the camera in to get a closer view of the machining operations, and I'm running the lathe without coolant so you can better see what's actually being machined. This concludes this video on the new brass thumb screws for the Accu-Slice Index table. These brass thumb screws are larger than the original thumb screws used on the Accu-Slice Index table. Therefore, they are much easier to use to tighten the top plate of the Accu-Slice Index table to the guide bars. These brass thumb screws will be installed on the next batch of Accu-Slice systems being manufactured. I did install these brass thumb screws on my Accu-Slice system in my shop. Again, since they're larger in diameter and twice the height of the original thumb screws, it's much easier to tighten the index table to the guide bars. If you want to install these upgraded brass thumb screws on your Accu-Slice system, they're available on our website on the Accu-Slice Repair and Replacements page. The part number for these brass thumb screws is AS276. Once again, thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions or comments, please give us a call or drop us an email. And thank you once again.